welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we are going to talk a little bit about the process of getting a permit, doing construction, whether it's a big new development or an addition to your home or just some modifications. There are procedures, and the Development Service Center is there to make sure your work is done safely. My guest is the head of that center, Sabo. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
This department has gone by a couple of different names. Right now we call it Development Services Center.
That's correct.
Now, as a homeowner, I don't think what I'm doing is development. You know, I'm just renovating my kitchen or putting up a fence. But all of those things, I guess depending on the extent to which I'm doing it, require a permit.
Right. There are, if you're doing interior work, if you're just painting or you're changing your carpet, no permits are required for that. But if you are
even new countertops or things, you know,
right.
That's not.
Yes, that's not. Now, if you are moving a plumbing fixture or changing, moving walls around in your house, if you're opening up a wall, that does require a permit. We want to make sure that that is all done safely and that your house is going to be able to continue to stand.
Now, Hannah, why do you have to have a permit and why do you have to pay a fee? Because it's my house, you know? Shouldn't I get to do what I want?
So there are state and federal regulations that we have to comply with. The state does adopt the International Building Code. We adopt it with slight modifications for Virginia, and so each jurisdiction has to enforce those regulations, and those are some of the books that I have here.
Those are your handy dandy resource manuals.
Yes, our reference
just a
material.
few.
Yeah, just a few of them. And so the City of Hampton is required to make sure that all of our homes are built and all of our commercial structures are built according to those requirements. And in order to make sure that they are built to those requirements and that they are going to continue to stand and be safe, we want to make sure that you get a permit so that we can either look at the plans before you start construction for certain development, like a new home. We want to see those plans before you begin construction.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And then there are other permits that we can go and inspect in the field and make sure that that it's being done correctly just in the field. But again, you need a permit for that to make sure that that everything, that Hampton is healthy and safe.
So, you know, in some ways, I think some people feel like it's government overreach because their house is their house, but they could sell that house.
Absolutely.
And the construction could come down on somebody's head.
Right.
They could have friends over. They could, you know, it isn't just they're isolated, they're taking their own risk. It's
right.
that you've got to ensure, because you're required to, that it is done according to certain standards.
Yes, absolutely. We want, if you're going to purchase a home in Hampton, we want those homeowners and those realtors to know that that home, if you have that certificate of occupancy, that's our seal of approval saying that that house was built to code and it's safe and it meets our standards and the state standards.
Okay, and so the fee for the permit, why do we charge a fee for permits?
The fees go to help they go into the general fund, actually, for the city, but we have to have staff to make sure that those plans are reviewed, and then we have a number of inspectors to go out and make sure that, you know, like I said, everything is built appropriately in the field. So that we have all of those inspectors, plans reviewers, and then the other staff associated.
And those fees don't even fully cover it. But
That's correct.
It is this idea that the people who are using those, and certainly new home developers occupy a greater percentage of time than me renovating my kitchen.
Right.
So it helps to make sure that the general population, you know, all the neighbors aren't paying for the inspectors on the new house. It
Right.
isolates some of the costs, not even all of the costs,
Yes.
to the user. It's kind of a user fee.
It is, and our fees are based on the job that you're doing. Plumbing fees, for example, are based on the number of new fixtures that you're putting in. If you're doing new buildings, that's based on the size of the building. So if you're putting in a giant commercial structure, you're going to pay more versus a smaller single-family dwelling.
Mm-hmm. Well, that all makes sense. I don't think everybody necessarily agrees.
Sure.
But it seems really complex. Like, you know, if I just want to do something small, like a shed or maybe extend my garage, I still need to have plans.
If you are doing a shed that is less than 256 square feet, you do not need to have plans.
Oh, look at that.
Yes, that is, and that actually comes from state. That is exempt from the building code. And again, from this book, it's referenced in there. But you still have to have a permit. We still want to make sure that you're complying with all of our zoning regulations, with setbacks and then rear yard coverage. So you still need a permit, but you don't need to have any plans. And then if you are doing any sort of an addition on your home, we do need to see plans. We want to make sure, so if you're just extending the garage, we want to make sure that those connections, that connection to that foundation, to that roof system is going to be done appropriately, and that you're not going to have a leaky roof.
And so some things, you know, we live in an area where there are a lot of do-it-yourselfers. There are people who work for the shipyard or the military, very handy people who have a lot of skills and who may be doing their own fence or their own deck. Those are things, again, for which they need a permit but don't have to have plans. So they don't have to draw that out if they agree to follow the set of standards that you guys publish. Right.
So for fences, no plans are required for your standard fence. You do need a permit, but no plans are required. For the deck, that was the other example. You're right. You don't need to have your own plans as long as you're going to build it according to the prescribed method. And that actually, again, comes from the
it was very complicated.
Yeah, the statewide building code. And we have examples of that. And as long as you're going to build it according to that standard, then you don't need to have your own plans.
And again, that's for safety. That's,
absolutely,
you know, size of the beams or the joists or how things are clipped together to make sure that it's not going to fall apart.
Absolutely.
It's not right away.
Right. Yes.
Is this frustrating for people? Like, how do homeowners react when they come into your office?
It can be a mixed bag. Sometimes they are appreciative that we are making sure that they're doing, excuse me, that they have a helping hand in this process, especially those do-it-yourselfers. Sometimes our inspectors will go out a number of times, say for like an electrical inspection, and make sure, excuse me, and make sure that it's being done correctly and help them out with that. So they can be appreciative. On the other side, sometimes they can be annoyed that that they need a permit or that we need to see those plans ahead of time. Especially with, like I said, with those additions, we want to see those plans before you go and start construction, before you dig that foundation.
Well, it's really important because if you don't, and some people kind of ignore that part of the law and get started on something, stand a really good chance of getting caught. Neighbors, you know, are going to see that construction debris coming outside. People are going to know something's going on. They're liable to call it into 311. And if they've already poured the foundation, that's a problem because we can't see what's underneath.
Right. Yes, absolutely. We have homeowners that will call in, and then, or neighbors that will call in, and then while our inspectors are out, in the neighborhoods, they have their area.
See things.
Yep, absolutely. They will stop by. If you start something and you don't have a permit for it, and it does require a permit, there is a early start fee that will apply. And you still have to get a permit. That doesn't excuse you from getting a permit. So you still have to come in and get that permit. And most of the time you will still have to give us plans and say you've already put in, finished the wall system. The inspector has no idea if those joists are correctly spaced or if that electrical wiring is done correctly. So they may make you cut holes in that wall. So you'll have to undo some of that work because they want to make sure that it was done according to code. So there is a serious downside to building things without permits.
I will say there's someone in my neighborhood who's building, I'm not sure what it is, whether it's a garage or an outbuilding, but it's large, and had to stop construction because my sense is they're not in the setback area.
Okay. Right.
And now they've got to apply for a variance, and if they'd done that before they started, it would have been a much smoother process.
Yes, absolutely. And some of the time, especially when you're talking about sheds, maybe we had one that was 6 inches. So the homeowner would have no problem having placed it, that 6 inches farther away from the property line, but now it's already there. So it's a much bigger problem.
Now, as a homeowner, I don't really want to have to worry about this. I am the kind of person, I might do the finish work myself, but I'm not going to do the construction. I want to hire someone and know that they're doing all these things. How can I be sure of that? How do I know if my contractors pulled the right permits? You
can, of course, call our office, and then if you're hiring a contractor, make sure that they are getting their permits. Anytime that there's a building permit required, it should be posted on your door. So if you have a contractor that says, oh, I promise I got my permits, and they're doing work, but you don't have that kind of annoying greed card on your door or in your window, probably you don't have permits. So again, call our office. Another thing, to make sure that your contractor is properly licensed. That's really important. Only a properly licensed contractor can pull permits. So, we will check that at the office before they pull their permits, but it's through DPOR, the Department of Professional and Occupational Regulations, and that website is open for anybody. So before you hire a contractor, I always advise that homeowners look them up on that website. The contractor should be able to provide you with their contractor number, and you can look them up and see if there have been any action taken against that contractor previously, and see what they're licensed to do. If they're telling you that they're licensed to do plumbing and mechanical and build a new home, you can look on there and see, are they actually licensed to do all that work, or are they simply, say, a handyman license? Interesting. I had no idea I could look that all up. So we should be signing a contract with them too for the price or whatever, but also what they agree to do, and the permit should be listed in there. And also, not that this is your department, but what should be listed in there is that they're going to dispose of the trash, because contractor trash is not supposed to go out at the curb. The city will not pick it up. And you will be stuck as the homeowner having to pay a fee if you haven't included that. Right. What are other things that, homeowners need to know, or, particularly maybe somebody who has bought land in Hampton or is planning to build their dream home? What kinds of things should we be thinking about, or should we be asking about? I always advise that before you purchase a home or purchase land to build a home on, or a commercial property, is to give our office a call and ask if we see anything. The major things that I would have them look into are seeing if there are any open permits on that property. If, say, you're buying a home and somebody got a permit to build an addition, but they never got inspections on it, and so that addition, if there's no inspections on it, may or may not be built to code. So seeing if there are any open permits, checking to see what the flood zone is of that property. Yeah. If you're in a flood zone, there can be flood insurance required, which can be have a high price tag. And then, of course, if you're doing construction, you want to make sure it's elevated. And then the other big item is the Chesapeake Bay Preservation District. A lot of those homes in the water. That has really, it is important. Yes. It is there to help us. It is there to help the environment and the bay. But it has thrown homeowners, contractors, developers for a loop, because land that people thought they could build on, they can't necessarily, or it's limited, or, And that's another one that came down from the state. So it's not a City of Hampton requirement that we comply with this, and actually we get audited yearly to make sure that we're complying with these regulations. And they check our ordinance before council adopts it to make sure that complies with the requirements. So if you're in the Chesapeake Bay Preservation District, and there are some areas of Hampton where you may not know, I mean, a big key is if you're on the water, you're going to be... But it isn't just the water you think about. Sometimes it's ditches, big ditches. Yes. It can be all kinds of things. And it isn't just the water, it's what they call, RPA, right? Resource Protection Area. Right, there's that buffer. And it's like 25, 50 feet. I mean, it's more land than people used to think about. Any feature, features can be, when you think of the major water bodies, but also ditches that will lead to, that are contiguous and will lead to that major water body that will lead to the Chesapeake Bay. That is all protected, and then there is a buffer. There's a 100-foot buffer from that feature, from the edge of that feature, that is a protected feature. And now, most of the time, you can build there, but there are additional requirements. So it's not saying that, you can never cut down a tree or you can never put a house there. There are just additional requirements and additional information that we're going to need before you get started. So if you think that you could be in that Chesapeake Bay Preservation District, give our office a call and we'll be happy to let you know. And if you do know you are in one of those buffer areas, a good rule of thumb is really before you add any impervious area, before you do anything.
What is impervious area?
Sorry, thank you. Yes.
That's a big word.
Impervious area. So we're talking about any concrete, driveways, decks, anything that's going to prevent that would prevent plants from growing in the natural earth.
Okay.
Anything like that, give our office a call, and we can, again, you can probably do what you're asking to do, but you may have additional fees or you may have to do additional plantings to help mitigate that effect of that new impervious area.
So how do we give your office a call, Hannah? You keep saying that. What is the best way to reach you?
My advice is always to go through our 311, which is phenomenal, and so that's there's 727-8311 would be the main number if you're in Hampton to call.
And that means, because there are some questions that they can answer.
There are some questions that they can answer.
There are permits that they can schedule or things that they can check off, but they can also then send it to the right person for that kind of specialized answer.
Yes. They'll make sure to either get you to zoning if you have questions about the Chesapeake Bay or flood zone, or get you to one of our permit techs. Again, if you have a question about what needs a permit or questions about plans, they'll get you to one of our reviewers. Yeah.
And a lot of this is on the website, so people can become at least a little bit familiar with it easily without having to talk to someone. But I think your message is, talk to someone first. Submit the paperwork. Don't just go it on your own and cross your fingers and hope it all ends well.
Yes, and our website is hampton.gov/building. And from there you can navigate residential or commercial, and then we have 99% of our applications are on the website, and we also have helpful some how-tos on there, and then kind of checklists that you can take a look at before submitting plans.
All sounds a little overwhelming.
I understand.
Does it seem overwhelming to you? I mean, you brought with you not all, actually, because I saw what you brought to council was almost twice that much, but the number of different regulations that you guys have to make sure we or our contractors comply with, it's a lot.
It is, and I know it can be frustrating to a homeowner who thinks that, who they're just increasing their living room, by a few feet, just making it a little bit bigger.
Right.
And, now they have to submit plans, and then those plans have to be reviewed, and so that takes 10 days, and that can be frustrating, and we understand that. But, our main concern is the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Hampton. So we want to be absolutely sure that when you are constructing that addition, when you are tearing down that wall and then adding on that new wall, that's going to be able to stand, that when the next hurricane comes around, that it's going to be able to withstand those wind loads, that if it's in the flood zone, that you're complying with all the flood zone requirements, that
and you're my check. When my contractor builds something, I want to know that it's built to the right standards.
Yes.
And, I can look and see as he builds it, but I don't know anything. So I'm not really very good at that.
Yes, absolutely.
So you're my safety check here.
Yes, absolutely. We're there to make sure that your contractor is building things appropriately. And when you're submitting those plans ahead of time, that can help save you money in the long run. If we can see that there are issues before you start to dig, that's going to save you money, because it costs much more to change those things in the field or have to make those changes later on versus just changing it on the paper.
So we want to see you as a partner in the effort to improve our homes, not as a hurdle.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to look at it that way.
Okay.
Thank you, Hannah.
All right, thank you.
And thank you for watching. I hope you've learned a little bit more about what the permits office does, how they function, and that they are there for your safety and to help you and to make sure you don't run afoul of anybody's rules that you have to comply with. So please don't feel shy about giving them a call before you start a project. Make sure that you know what you need to do as you go along instead of getting too far down a path and having to spend more money and time correcting it. Thanks for watching.